The gentle rocking of the train usually lulled me into a peaceful state. But that night, exhaustion had dragged me under like quicksand. 3 consecutive night shifts at St. Mary's Hospital had left me hollow, my scrubs still faintly smelling of antiseptic and other people's pain. I remember checking my watch, 11:42 p.m., before my eyelids surrendered to gravity, my head finding support against the cold window as suburban Chicago blurred into darkness outside. I hadn't meant to fall asleep, not on the last train of the night, not when I lived in that part of town where streetlights flickered more than they shone, not when my tiny apartment waited for me, empty except for the stack of overdue bills on the kitchen counter. The memory fragments after that, the train's brakes squealing, someone saying my name, the weight of unfamiliar hands on my shoulders. Had I shown my ID to someone? Had I spoken? The gap in my memory gaped like an open wound. When consciousness returned, it arrived with the disorienting sensation of sinking into clouds. My body was cradled in softness so complete it felt alien. The sheets against my skin weren't the rough cotton I owned, but something that flowed like cool water. I breathed in and caught unfamiliar scents. Sandalwood, leather, and something sharper beneath, like metal or gunpowder. My eyes flew open. The ceiling above me stretched endlessly, pristine white with intricate crown molding framing the edges. Not my water-stained rental ceiling. Not any ceiling I recognized. Panic rose in my throat as I bolted upright, the silk sheets pooling around my waist. I wore a nightgown of pale blue silk that wasn't mine, delicate lace tracing the neckline. My nurse's uniform was nowhere to be seen. My fingertips trembled as they traced the unfamiliar fabric, wondering who had changed my clothes, whose hands had touched my unconscious body. That's when I saw it, catching the morning light that streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. A ring on my left hand, a diamond so large it seemed to have its own gravity, flanked by sapphires that matched the blue of the nightgown. The weight of it felt foreign, threatening. "You're awake." The voice came from the doorway, low, smooth, with an accent I couldn't place, something Eastern European layered over perfect English. I turned toward it, and my breath caught in my throat. He stood like he owned not just the room, but the air inside it. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my annual salary, dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on the cover of a magazine. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw dusted with stubble, and eyes the color of smoke, but it was the stillness that radiated from him that made my skin prickle with warning. The careful, predatory stillness of someone who never needed to rush. Behind him, just visible in the hallway, stood a man with the unmistakable build of security, earpiece, impassive expression, and the telltale bulge of a weapon under his jacket. "Where am I?" My voice emerged as a whisper. "Who are you?" He stepped into the room, and I instinctively pulled the sheets higher. His eyes, cold, assessing, noticed the movement, and something like amusement flickered across his face. "My name is Alexei Volkov, and you, Elena Weaver, are in my home." He moved closer, each step measured and deliberate. "You don't remember last night?" "Last night. The train. The darkness. Nothing." "No," I managed, my throat dry. "I don't know how I got here. I don't know why I'm wearing this." I raised my left hand, the diamond catching the light, throwing rainbows against the wall. "I don't know what this means." He sat on the edge of the bed, and the mattress barely dipped under his weight. This close, I could smell his cologne. Expensive, subtle, with notes of cedar and something darker beneath. His proximity sent electricity racing across my skin. "It means," he said softly, reaching out to touch the ring, his fingers brushing mine, "that you are under my protection now." Protection. The word held a weight that made my stomach clench. "I don't need protection," I said, pulling my hand away. "I need to go home. I have a shift at the hospital tonight." His smile never reached his eyes. "You no longer work at that hospital, Elena. I've arranged everything. Your resignation has been submitted. Your apartment has been cleared out. Your life, as it was, is over." The casual way he dismantled my existence sent ice through my veins. "You can't do that. That's kidnapping. That's illegal." "Is it kidnapping when you agreed? When you signed the papers yourself?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document, placing it beside me on the silk sheets. Your signature is quite distinctive. Those loops in your E's. I grabbed the paper, my hands shaking. There it was, a marriage license with my signature beside his. But I had no memory of signing anything. This isn't real, I whispered. I would never. You were quite emphatic about it, actually, he said, standing again. After I helped you off the train, after you told me about your father's debts. My father? The mention of him sent a fresh wave of confusion through me. Dad had died 6 months ago, leaving behind nothing but gambling debts I was slowly trying to pay off. What does my father have to do with this? Alexei's expression hardened slightly. Edward Weaver borrowed a significant sum from me 3 years ago. He lost it all at the tables, as expected. I've been watching you since then, waiting. Waiting for what? The question escaped before I could stop it. For you to finish your nursing degree. For you to establish yourself. I don't collect on debts aimlessly, Elena. He spoke as if explaining something simple to a child. I watched you work those double shifts. Watched you cry in your car between jobs. Watched you send money to cover your father's debts without understanding who truly owned them. Horror crawled up my spine as the implications settled over me. This stranger had been monitoring me, following me, for years. Those weren't his gambling debts I was paying. Some were. The most pressing ones belonged to me. He adjusted his cufflinks, platinum I noticed, with tiny diamonds catching the light. Last night, you fell asleep on the train. I happened to be there. You were vulnerable, alone. I brought you to safety. And dressed me in clothes I don't own? Put a ring on my finger I didn't choose? My voice rose, panic edging into it. That's not safety. That's business. He cut in, his voice cooling several degrees. Your father owed me $3 million, Elena. You can work as a nurse for 40 years and never come close to paying that. Or, he gestured to the room, to the ring. You can honor a different arrangement. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. $3 million. The number was astronomical, impossible. What kind of arrangement? I asked, though something deep in my gut already knew. Marriage. 1 year, minimum. You live here. Accompany me when required. Play the role of devoted wife. His eyes traveled over me, not lasciviously but calculatingly, as if assessing a possession. In return, your father's debt is erased. You'll want for nothing. And if I refuse? If I walk out that door right now? Something dangerous flickered in his gaze. The debt transfers fully to you. I'll take everything you have, which isn't much. Then I'll take what you don't have yet. Your future earnings, your professional license, any chance at a normal life. Your father made certain arrangements before his death to ensure his obligations would transfer to you. I stared at the ring on my finger, at this stranger who claimed ownership over me through financial chains I hadn't even known existed. The walls of this luxurious room suddenly felt like prison bars gilded in gold. You drugged me, I said, the realization dawning. On the train. That's why I don't remember anything. Alexei's expression remained impassive. You were exhausted. You fell asleep. When I woke you, you were confused. Suggestible. I took advantage of that state, yes. But no drugs, Elena. I don't need such crude methods. A knock at the door interrupted us. Another man in a dark suit appeared, whispering something in what sounded like Russian. Alexei nodded, then turned back to me. I have business to attend to. Katya will help you dress. We have a lunch engagement at 1, your first public appearance as my fiancé. He moved toward the door, then paused. Don't try to leave. This entire property is secured. For your protection, of course. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like a vault ceiling. Seconds later, a petite blonde woman entered, her expression professionally blank. Good morning, Miss Weaver, she said, her accent similar to Alexei's. I've prepared your clothing for today. Would you like to shower first? I pulled the unfamiliar sheets around me like armor. I want my own clothes, my phone. I need to call someone. Katya's expression didn't change. Your old possessions have been disposed of. Mr. Volkov has provided a new wardrobe, new phone, new everything. She gestured toward a door I assumed led to a bathroom. The shower has excellent water pressure. I recommend you use it. Left with no immediate alternative, I slid out of the bed, the cool marble floor shocking against my bare feet. The bathroom was larger than my entire apartment had been, all white marble and gold fixtures. As hot water pounded against my skin, I frantically tried to piece together what had happened, how my life had unraveled so completely in the span of a single train ride. The mirror revealed a pale, frightened version of myself, dark circles under brown eyes, blonde hair hanging limply around a face that looked younger than my 27 years. The woman staring back at me seemed like a stranger, as unfamiliar as the diamond weighing down my left hand. One thing became clear as I dressed in clothes I'd never bought: a cream cashmere sweater, designer jeans that fit perfectly, boots that cost more than a month's rent. I needed to escape. I needed to find proof of what Alexei had done, how he'd manipulated me into this situation. I needed allies. But as I emerged from the bathroom, to find Katya waiting patiently, as she led me through hallways where security personnel stood at regular intervals, as I glimpsed the grounds outside. Manicured gardens surrounded by high walls, topped with security cameras. The magnitude of my imprisonment settled over me like a shroud. I wasn't just in the Mafia boss's bed. I was in his world now, and every exit appeared to be sealed. The car that carried us to lunch was a sleek black Mercedes with windows so darkly tinted they seemed to absorb light. I sat rigidly beside Alexei in the back seat, a careful foot of space between us that felt both too much and not nearly enough. His driver, a broad-shouldered man who hadn't spoken a word, navigated through Chicago's downtown streets, while another suited man rode in the passenger seat, his eyes constantly scanning our surroundings. Your security is extensive, I said, breaking the silence that had stretched between us since leaving the mansion. Alexei's gaze shifted from his phone to me. Necessary precautions. Against what? His lips curved slightly. Against those who would take what's mine. The possessive word sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. I'm not yours. The ring on your finger suggests otherwise. He reached across the space between us, his fingers capturing my left hand with unexpected gentleness. His thumb traced over the enormous diamond. This belonged to my grandmother. She survived the siege of Leningrad wearing it sewn inside her coat. Family is everything to me, Elena. The intimate gesture, the story behind the ring, created a dangerous moment of connection I couldn't afford. I pulled my hand away. We're not family. We're a business arrangement, according to you. Something darkened in his gaze. Business and family are often the same in my world. The restaurant was clearly exclusive. No visible name on the Art Deco facade. Just a discreet golden door where a host immediately recognized Alexei and ushered us past waiting patrons to a private room in the back. The space was intimate, with just one table centered beneath a crystal chandelier, the walls lined with wine bottles behind glass. Your usual table, Mr. Volkov, the host murmured, pulling out my chair. I sank into the plush velvet seat, hyper-aware of the ring weighing down my finger, of the eyes that had followed us through the restaurant, curious, respectful, afraid. Whoever Alexei was, these people knew him, deferred to him. You come here often, I observed as a waiter silently poured water into crystal glasses. I own it. He didn't say it with pride or arrogance, just simple fact. As I own several businesses throughout the city, legitimate enterprises before you ask. I doubted anything about this man was truly legitimate. What exactly do you do, Alexei? Imports, exports, real estate, private lending. His eyes held mine. Your father primarily benefited from the latter. The mention of my father sent a fresh wave of confusion through me. Dad had been a history professor with a gambling problem he'd hidden until it consumed him. I still don't understand how he got involved with someone like you. Someone like me, Alexei repeated, his accent thickening slightly. You mean someone who could see his desperation at the tables? Who offered help when the other sharks began to circle? He leaned forward. Your father was losing everything, Elena. his home, his reputation. I gave him a chance. A chance that's now my prison. I whispered, his expression hardened. A chance at a new life. Look around you. He gestured to our opulent surroundings. This is hardly a cell. A gilded cage is still a cage. Before he could respond, the door opened, and a couple entered. A middle-aged man with silver hair, and a much younger woman draped in designer clothes and jewelry that somehow looked gaudy compared to my simple outfit. "Alexei!" The man spread his arms wide. "And this must be the mysterious fiancé we've heard about." Alexei stood, his posture subtly shifting. Shoulders back, chin slightly raised. Even without moving, he seemed to expand, dominating the room. Victor. Isabella. Meet Elena Weaver, soon to be Elena Volkov. The name change hit me like a slap. I hadn't even considered that part of the arrangement. Victor grasped my hand, his grip lingering too long, enchanting. Where has Alexei been hiding such a beauty? She's been completing her nursing degree, Alexei answered smoothly, placing his hand on the small of my back. The touch was possessive, a clear message to Victor, whose eyes had been wandering lower than appropriate. Isabella gave me a cold once-over. A nurse? How charitable of you, Alexei. The implied insult was clear, but Alexei's hand pressed more firmly against my back, a silent command to stay calm. Intelligence and compassion are qualities I value, he replied, his tone light but edged with steel. Unlike some, I don't require constant entertainment. Isabella's face flushed, and Victor cleared his throat uncomfortably. Let's order, shall we? I'm starving. Throughout lunch, I observed the dynamic between these people. Victor deferred to Alexei in subtle ways, waiting for him to speak first, laughing too enthusiastically at his dry comments. Isabella alternated between fawning over Victor and sending me calculating glances. They spoke of businesses and people I didn't know, with undercurrents I couldn't decipher. I picked at my food, some delicate fish dish I'd never be able to afford on my own, and tried to look appropriately engaged while my mind raced. I was learning things about Alexei through these interactions. He was powerful, yes, but it was a specific kind of power that commanded respect, tinged with fear. The way Victor carefully avoided certain topics, the way the staff moved silently around us, anticipating needs before they were expressed. This was not just wealth. This was influence of a darker variety. So, Victor said, after draining his third glass of wine, when's the happy day? Isabella and I would be devastated to miss it. Before I could say anything, Alexei answered, We're keeping it intimate, family only. But we are family, aren't we? Victor pressed, something sharp beneath his jovial tone. After everything we've been through? Alexei's face remained pleasant, but I felt his body tense beside me. Business associates, Victor. Let's not conflate terms. A tense silence followed, broken by Isabella's forced laughter. Men and their business talk. Elena, darling, you must let me help you shop for the wedding. That ring needs a dress to match its splendor. Thank you, I managed, but I think I'll manage on my own. Of course, she said, waving a hand adorned with gaudy rings, though I wonder what sort of gown a nurse would choose for marrying into Alexei's position. Alexei's hand moved from the table to my knee, his fingers pressing lightly in what I realized was a warning, but something in me snapped at this woman's condescension. Something practical, I said, smiling tightly, with pockets deep enough to carry a scalpel. You never know when someone might need emergency surgery for an acute case of superiority complex. Isabella's mouth fell open. Victor stared. And Alexei, to my surprise, let out a genuine laugh, the sound rich and unexpected. This, he said to Victor, is why I chose her. The rest of lunch passed in a blur of tension barely concealed by social niceties. When we finally left, Alexei guided me back to the waiting car with a hand firmly on the small of my back, his fingers splayed possessively. That was unwise, he said once we were inside, though his tone lacked real anger. She was insulting me. Isabella insults everyone. It's her primary function in life. He studied me with new interest. You surprised me. I expected tears, not threats of impromptu surgery. I've worked hospital night shifts in Chicago for years. It takes more than a Botoxed socialite to intimidate me. I turned to face him fully. But you never answered Victor's question. When exactly is this supposed wedding happening? Alexei's expression grew serious. When I determine the timing is right, and until then, I just stay locked in your house, wearing your grandmother's ring, pretending I chose this? You did choose this, Elena. Last night, on that train platform, when I explained your father's debt, when I offered you a way out, his voice was calm, reasonable, making me doubt my own certainty. I don't remember making that choice, I insisted. I would never agree to marry a stranger, no matter what my father owed. You were exhausted, vulnerable, but you were coherent when you signed the papers. His gaze was steady, unwavering. I don't force unwilling women into marriage. That's not how I conduct business. Then let me go. Now. If this was truly my choice, then I should be free to unchoose it. The car slowed, and I realized we'd arrived back at his estate, a sprawling property I hadn't properly seen in daylight. The main house was an imposing stone structure, with manicured gardens surrounding it and a high wall encircling everything. Security cameras were visible at regular intervals along the perimeter. Alexei studied me for a long moment. 3 days, he finally said. Stay for 3 days. Get to know me, my world. If after that time you still wish to leave, I won't stop you. Hope flared in my chest, quickly tempered by suspicion, and my father's debt will remain. But I'll arrange a more conventional repayment plan. 3 days. I could endure 3 days in this gilded cage if it meant freedom afterward. All right. 3 days. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Excellent, then let me give you a proper tour of what will be your home. The estate was even more impressive inside than I'd glimpsed that morning. Room after room of museum-quality art and antiques, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a kitchen where a private chef prepared our meals. Security personnel maintained a discreet presence throughout, and I noticed that certain doors remained locked, certain areas off-limits. My office is private, Alexei explained when we passed a heavy wooden door guarded by one of his men. Business matters require discretion. What kind of business requires armed guards inside your home? I asked. He merely smiled. The profitable kind. As evening approached, Alexei led me to a sitting room where a fire crackled in a marble fireplace. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter, handing one to me before taking a seat opposite. You mentioned last night that you've been working double shifts to pay your father's debts, he said, swirling the liquid in his glass. That must have been exhausting. I took a small sip, the whiskey burning a path down my throat. I did what I had to do. And now? Now I'm here, aren't I? Trading one form of servitude for another. Something like genuine hurt flickered across his face. Is that how you see marriage? Servitude? Marriage is supposed to be a choice between equals. This, I gestured between us, whatever this isn't equal. You hold all the power. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Power is rarely equal, Elena. But that doesn't mean there can't be respect. Understanding. How can there be understanding when I don't even know who you really are? I set my glass down. The restaurant owner who keeps armed guards. The businessman with connections to Russian gambling debts. Who are you, Alexei Volkov? For a long moment, he was silent, studying me as if weighing a decision. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower, more intimate. I come from a family that has, for generations, operated outside conventional laws when necessary. We protect our own. We honor our obligations. We never forget a debt, owed to us or by us. You're talking about the Mafia, I said flatly. He didn't flinch from the word. I prefer to think of it as an alternative business structure with strong family values. Despite everything, I almost laughed at his description. Do all your alternative business partners know about me? Am I just another acquisition? No, he said, with unexpected sharpness. You are not to be discussed. My personal life remains separate from business matters. Then why parade me in front of Victor and Isabella today? Victor needed to see that I've made my choice, that I'm unavailable. He finished his drink in one smooth motion. There have been attempts to forge alliances through marriage. I've rejected all such arrangements. Until me. Until you, he agreed, his gaze holding mine across the firelight. The daughter of the man who tried to cheat me, who now wears my family ring. There's a certain poetry to it, don't you think? I stood, suddenly needing distance from his intensity, from the strange magnetism he exuded. I think I'd like to rest before dinner. This has been overwhelming. Alexei rose as well, closer than I expected, of course. Katya will help you with anything you need. As if summoned, the blonde assistant appeared at the doorway. I moved to follow her, but Alexei caught my hand, his thumb brushing over the ring. One more thing, Elena. While you're here, while you wear this, his grip tightened slightly, you are, to the outside world, mine, my choice, my future wife. Remember that when we're in public. I pulled my hand away, ignoring the lingering warmth of his touch. For 3 days. Yes, he agreed, though something in his eyes suggested he believed otherwise. For 3 days. As Katya led me back through the labyrinthine hallways, I caught sight of myself in an ornate mirror. Designer clothes, diamond ring, pale face framed by hair that now fell in soft waves, thanks to the expensive products in Alexei's bathroom. I looked like a stranger, a woman playing dress-up in a life that wasn't hers. But somewhere beneath that reflection was still me, the girl who had worked her way through nursing school, who had faced down aggressive patients and condescending doctors, who had survived her father's death and the crushing weight of his secrets. That girl wasn't going to disappear inside Alexei Volkov's world, no matter how seductive its comforts might be. 3 days to find a way out, 3 days to discover what really happened that night on the train. 3 days to understand the man who claimed to own me, and why, despite everything, I couldn't quite bring myself to hate him. Sleep evaded me that night, despite the cloud-like mattress and silken sheets. I lay awake in the massive bedroom, not Alexei's, but a guest suite he'd assigned to me, until the wedding, listening to the occasional footsteps of security personnel patrolling the hallways. The ring felt heavy on my finger, a constant reminder of my bizarre situation. When dawn finally painted the sky in watercolor hues of pink and gold, I gave up on rest. I slipped out of bed and padded to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the estate grounds. In the early morning light, I could see the true extent of my prison. Manicured gardens stretching to a high stone wall, a swimming pool that glittered like sapphires, and beyond that, dense trees that offered privacy from the outside world. Security cameras mounted at strategic intervals completed the picture of beautiful confinement. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, expecting Katya with breakfast or instructions for the day. Instead, Alexei himself entered, already impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. He carried a silver tray with 2 steaming mugs. "You're awake early," he observed, setting the tray on a small table by the window. "I thought you might appreciate coffee." The domesticity of the gesture felt jarring coming from him. "Thank you," I said cautiously, accepting the mug he offered. The rich aroma of perfectly brewed coffee filled my senses. "Did you sleep well?" He took a seat in one of the armchairs by the window, motioning for me to join him. I sank into the chair opposite his, curling my legs beneath me. "Not particularly. That's to be expected. New surroundings." His eyes, more gray than blue in the morning light, studied me over the rim of his mug. "Day 1 of 3 begins now. How would you like to spend it?" The question caught me off guard. I'd expected demands, not choices. "I'd like to understand more about my father's connection to you, about the debt I'm supposedly paying off." A flicker of something, respect, perhaps, crossed his features. Direct. "I appreciate that." He set his mug down. "Your father first approached me 4 years ago. He'd already exhausted conventional loans, credit cards, family goodwill. He'd heard my name in certain circles, desperate men often do, and sought me out. At a casino? I prompted. At this very house. He came to a charity gala I hosted, gained entry through an acquaintance. Alexei's expression hardened slightly. He cornered me in my study, begging for help. Said he had a system that couldn't fail. They always have a system. I tried to imagine my father, tweedy, distracted Professor Weaver, approaching this dangerous man, and failed. "And you just gave him $3 million? That seems..." Imprudent. A cold smile touched Alexei's lips. I gave him $500,000, secured against his house, his pension, his life insurance. The rest accumulated through interest, penalties for missed payments, and additional loans he secured through less reputable associates of mine without my knowledge. That can't be legal, I protested. Legal is a flexible concept in certain circles. He leaned forward slightly. Your father knew the terms. He signed the papers with a steady hand. Just as I supposedly had, on that train platform I couldn't remember. And when did you decide I would be collateral? His gaze intensified. I didn't. When Edward died, his debt transferred to his estate, which, as his only living relative, became your responsibility. I watched you struggle for 6 months, working yourself to exhaustion trying to pay creditors who were nothing compared to what you owed me. He paused, something almost like admiration in his voice. You never missed a payment, small as they were. I honored my commitments, I said stiffly. I always do. I know. It's why I decided to offer an alternative arrangement when our paths crossed on that train. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. Get dressed. I want to show you something. 30 minutes later, freshly showered and dressed in clothes that had mysteriously appeared in my closet overnight, dark jeans, a cashmere sweater in deep burgundy, and leather boots, I followed Alexei through the mansion to a room I hadn't seen during yesterday's tour. When he unlocked the heavy door, I expected another display of wealth, perhaps an art collection or wine cellar. Instead, I found myself in what looked like a hospital room. Medical equipment, top-of-the-line monitors, oxygen tanks, IV stands, surrounded a hospital bed. The space was immaculate, sterile, ready for use. What is this? I asked, professional curiosity momentarily overriding my wariness. My mother's room, Alexei said quietly. She has a rare form of early-onset dementia. When she's here rather than the care facility, this is where she stays. I moved closer to the equipment, examining it with a nurse's trained eye. Everything was state-of-the-art, better than what we had at St. Mary's. You care for her here? With professional help, he confirmed. The best neurologists, round-the-clock nursing staff when needed. He watched me inspect the setup. Your father mentioned your specialty was neurological care, that you worked primarily with dementia and stroke patients. The realization hit me with startling clarity. Is that why you chose me? Because I'm a neurological nurse? Alexei's expression remained unreadable. It was a factor. My mother responds better to familiar faces. The consistency of one primary caregiver rather than rotating staff would benefit her. So I'm not just a wife, I'm a live-in nurse, I said bitterly. Efficient. You misunderstand, he replied, a rare flash of emotion, something like offense crossing his features. I would never expect you to serve as her nurse. But having someone in the house who understands her condition, who wouldn't be frightened or disturbed by its manifestations, that would be valuable. I looked around the room, seeing it through new eyes, the care that had gone into its preparation, the expense spared for nothing that might improve a patient's comfort. This didn't align with my image of a cold-blooded mafia boss. Where is she now? I asked. At Lakeside Care Center. I visit 3 times a week. He moved toward the door. We could go today if you'd like. The offer surprised me. You'd take me outside the estate? A slight smile touched his lips. You're not a prisoner, Elena. You're my fiancé, as far as anyone knows. Where I go, you can go, with appropriate security, of course. The drive to the care facility took 40 minutes, during which Alexei received multiple phone calls that he took in rapid-fire Russian, his tone shifting from conversational to commanding, and back again. I pretended to watch the scenery while straining to understand any words that might give me insight into his business. The only phrase I caught repeatedly was something that sounded like shipment problems. Lakeside Care Center looked more like a luxury resort than a medical facility, situated on sprawling grounds overlooking Lake Michigan, with architecture that blended modern efficiency with homey warmth. The staff greeted Alexei by name, with a deference that suggested his donations likely kept the place running. Mr. Volkov, the director said, hurrying to meet us in the lobby. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. Change of plans, Dr. Hendricks, Alexei replied smoothly. I wanted my fiancé to meet my mother. The director's eyebrows shot up as he noticed me for the first time. Fiancé? How wonderful. He extended his hand. I'm Robert Hendricks, facility director and Mrs. Volkov's primary physician. Elena Weaver, I replied, shaking his hand. I'm a neurological nurse at St. Mary's. Or I was until recently. Elena will be joining my household permanently, Alexei explained, his hand finding the small of my back in what was becoming a familiar, possessive gesture. Well, this is certainly a surprise, Dr. Hendricks said, leading us down a sunlit corridor. Sophia has been having a good week. She was quite lucid yesterday when the physical therapist worked with her. Has she been sleeping? Alexei asked, his businesslike demeanor softening slightly with genuine concern. Better, with the new medication regimen, the doctor replied, though still restless at night sometimes. They continued discussing medication adjustments and therapy schedules with a level of detail that confirmed Alexei was deeply involved in his mother's care. It was the first truly humanizing glimpse I'd had of the man who claimed to own me. Sofia Volkova's private suite was decorated in soft blues and creams, with fresh flowers on every surface and large windows overlooking the lake. The woman herself was tiny in her wheelchair, fragile-looking with silver-streaked dark hair and the same striking gray-blue eyes as her son. Despite her illness, she carried herself with dignity, her posture regal even in weakness. Alyosha, she said when we entered, her accent much thicker than her son's. You bring me a visitor? Alexei knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her frail hand in his. When he spoke, his voice held a gentleness I hadn't heard before. Mama, this is Elena. She is going to be my wife. Sophia's intelligent eyes examined me, missing nothing despite her condition. Come closer, girl. Let me see you. I approached cautiously, feeling strangely nervous under her scrutiny. Your hands, she commanded, extending her own. I placed my hands in hers, surprised by the strength in her grip. She turned them over, examining the ring, then looking at my palms as if reading my future. A healer's hands, she declared, strong but gentle. She looked up at my face. You are afraid of my son. Heat rushed to my cheeks. It's all right. She interrupted with a wave of her hand. Most people are. Even when he was a little boy, so serious, so intense. Her gaze shifted to Alexei. But you're not just afraid. You're angry. I couldn't deny it. Yes. Sophia laughed, the sound unexpectedly musical. Good. He needs someone who won't cower. Too many do. She patted the chair beside her. Sit. Tell me how you met my difficult son. With Alexei watching, I gave a heavily edited version of our meeting, focusing on his rescue of me on the train and omitting any mention of debts or forced arrangements. Sophia listened attentively, occasionally glancing between her son and me with shrewd assessment. And you, Elena, what do you know of our family? She asked when I finished. Very little, I admitted. Alexei's father, my Mikhail. He was like him. Powerful. Feared. Her eyes grew distant. But at home, with me, with our son, he was different. Gentle. A man can wear many faces, you know. Mama, Alexei interrupted softly. Elena doesn't need a history lesson today. She needs truth, Sophia corrected sharply. If she is to be a Volkova. She turned back to me. Our family has enemies, Elena. Always has. Alexei learned young to protect what is his. Sometimes it makes him, how do Americans say, heavy-handed. I couldn't help a small smile at her diplomatic phrasing. That's one way to put it. But a man who loves deeply also protects fiercely, she continued, her gaze intense despite the occasional flicker of confusion that crossed her features. Remember this, when his ways seem harsh to you. When we left an hour later, after Sophia had begun to tire, I felt unsettled by the encounter. I'd expected to meet a frail, confused woman. Instead, I'd found a matriarch who, despite her illness, still commanded respect and saw far too clearly. Your mother is remarkable, I said as we walked back to the car. Yes, Alexei agreed simply. She always has been. She seems to think our engagement is real, I observed. You didn't tell her the truth. His expression hardened. My mother doesn't need to know about business arrangements. She sees what makes her happy, her son, finally settling down with a woman she approves of. And when these 3 days are over, when I leave, what will you tell her then? Alexei stopped walking, turning to face me fully. Are you so certain you will leave? The intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. I don't belong in your world, Alexei. You fit quite well today, he countered. With my mother, with the staff here. You didn't flinch from her condition or talk down to her as many do. That's my training, not evidence I should be your pretend wife. His hand reached up, brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. Perhaps. Or perhaps there are places you belong that you haven't yet discovered. The touch, the words, sent an involuntary shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear. I stepped back, needing distance from his magnetic presence. 1 day down, 2 to go, I reminded him, and myself. His smile held a confidence that unnerved me. Indeed, and I have plans for tomorrow that may change your perspective further. As we drove back to the estate in silence, I found myself glancing at Alexei's profile. The strong jaw, the intense focus as he read emails on his phone. I'd seen a different side of him today with his mother. A side that complicated the simple narrative of captor and captive I'd constructed, and that, perhaps, was more dangerous than anything else about him. The second morning of my 3-day arrangement dawned with a gentle knock on my door. Katya entered with a tray of breakfast and a garment bag draped over her arm. Mr. Volkov requests that you join him at 9, she said, hanging the bag in the closet. You'll need to dress appropriately. I eyed the bag suspiciously. Where are we going? You have appointments in the city. Her expression remained professionally blank. The dress is for this evening's event. After she left, I unzipped the bag to find an elegant black dress that looked like it belonged on a red carpet. Sleek, simple in its lines, but unmistakably expensive, with a neckline that would showcase the diamond pendant that had mysteriously appeared on my dresser overnight. Another gift I hadn't asked for. Another invisible chain. Precisely at 9, I made my way downstairs in the casual but chic outfit I'd found laid out for me. Tailored black pants, a cream silk blouse, and a soft gray cashmere cardigan. Alexei waited in the foyer, speaking quietly to one of his security team. When he saw me, he dismissed the man with a nod and turned his full attention to me. You look rested, he observed. Better than yesterday. Amazing what accepting one's fate can do, I replied dryly. A slight smile touched his lips. Is that what you've done? Accepted your fate? For the next 48 hours, I glanced at my watch pointedly. Then we'll see. He offered his arm with old-world formality. Then let's make the most of those hours. The day that followed was nothing like I'd expected. Rather than another display of his criminal empire, Alexei took me to a series of appointments that felt surreally normal, a private fitting at a designer boutique where the staff fawned over Mr. Volkov's fiancé, a visit to a renowned jeweler to resize my ring. It was my grandmother's, Alexei explained to the beaming jeweler, maintaining our fiction. Lunch at a rooftop restaurant with views spanning the city. Throughout it all, his security team maintained a discreet but vigilant presence, one man always with us, others positioned strategically nearby, all connected by earpieces. Alexei himself seemed relaxed but watchful, his eyes constantly scanning our surroundings in a way I was beginning to recognize as habitual. You never fully relax, do you? I asked over dessert, a delicate chocolate confection I'd barely touched. He considered my question seriously. Not in public, no. Because of your business? Because of who I am. He took a sip of espresso. My father taught me early that letting down one's guard is a luxury our family can't afford. That sounds exhausting, I said, surprising myself with genuine sympathy. Something like appreciation flickered in his eyes. You get used to it. The vigilance becomes second nature. Is that why you built your fortress? To have somewhere you can actually relax? Partly. He studied me for a moment. You're very observant, Elena. I'm a nurse. Observation is part of the job. I set down my fork. Though I notice you've arranged for me to not be a nurse anymore. I can have your position reinstated if that's what you want, he offered unexpectedly, though perhaps at a better hospital, with more reasonable hours. The offer caught me off guard. You'd let me continue working? Within certain parameters, yes. Security considerations would need to be addressed, but it could be arranged. I narrowed my eyes. Why would you do that? Because despite what you think, I don't wish to cage you, he said, his voice dropping to a more intimate register. I want a partner, not a prisoner. A partner in what exactly? I challenged. Your alternative business structure? Something darkened in his gaze. There are aspects of my life that would remain separate, for your protection as much as my interests. Convenient, I murmured. Necessary, he countered. You've seen how Victor looked at you yesterday. Imagine what my real enemies would do to the woman wearing my ring if they had the chance. A chill ran through me at his words. At the casual way he referenced enemies who would target me simply for my proximity to him. This was the reality of his world. The danger lurking beneath the luxury. Our final stop before returning to the estate was a private art gallery in a converted warehouse. Unlike the other locations we'd visited, this one bore no signage, its entrance unmarked except for a discreet security camera. Alexei's driver pulled around to a back alley, where a steel door opened as we approached. What is this place? I asked as Alexei helped me from the car. Something I think you'll appreciate, he replied cryptically. Inside, the industrial space had been transformed into a stunning gallery, soaring ceilings, polished concrete floors, and walls displaying art that even my untrained eye recognized as exceptional. Modern pieces hung alongside classical paintings. Sculptures dotted the open floor, and at the far end, a spiral staircase led to an upper level. A tall, elegant woman with short silver hair approached us, embracing Alexei with European double kisses. You're late, she admonished him in accented English. Forgive me, Irina. Elena and I lost track of time. He placed his hand at the small of my back, the gesture now familiar. Elena, this is Irina Kuznetsova, an old family friend and the finest art curator in the city. The woman's shrewd eyes assessed me without pretense. So this is the nurse who has captured our Alexei's heart. I expected someone more sophisticated, I supplied when she trailed off. Irina laughed, a rich, genuine sound. I was going to say intimidated. Most women he brings here are too busy fawning to actually look at the art. She offered her hand. Come. Let me show you what he's been working on. Curiosity piqued, I followed her through the gallery to a section cordoned off by velvet ropes. Alexei remained slightly behind us, taking a call on his phone and speaking in hushed Russian. This, Irina said with evident pride, is the Volkov Foundation's latest project. Before us hung a series of paintings I didn't recognize, vibrant works from various periods and styles. Beside each was a placard describing the piece's history, with special emphasis on how it had been looted during World War II and subsequently recovered. These are all stolen works? I asked, surprised. Rescued works, Irina corrected. Recovered from private collections where they'd been hidden for decades after being looted from Jewish families during the Holocaust. The foundation specializes in returning art to the descendants of the original owners. I turned to Alexei, who had rejoined us. You run a foundation that recovers stolen art? He shrugged, almost looking embarrassed. It was my mother's project originally. I continued it after her health declined. The foundation has returned over 200 pieces to their rightful owners, Irina added, though some families are harder to track down than others. She gestured to a particularly striking landscape. This one, we've been searching for the heirs for 3 years. The family scattered across Europe during the war. I studied Alexei with new confusion. The man who threatened me with financial ruin was the same man who dedicated resources to returning stolen art to Holocaust survivors' families. The contradiction made my head spin. Why show me this? I asked him when Irina excused herself to take a call. Because you should know what you're walking away from, he answered simply. Not just me, but the work we could do together. Art recovery, legacy, he corrected. My mother always taught me that power without purpose is meaningless. The foundation is part of our purpose. His eyes held mine. Your skills, your compassion. They could expand our impact in healthcare, in patient advocacy. I laughed incredulously. So now, I'm not just a wife and nurse, but also your foundation's healthcare ambassador? You could be whatever you choose to be, Elena, he said seriously. With resources behind you that most people only dream of, the offer was seductive in its expansiveness. Limitless possibilities, the power to actually make a difference rather than barely keeping my head above water as I had been. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine it, working alongside Alexei in this capacity, channeling his wealth toward genuine good. Then reality reasserted itself. All it would cost is my freedom. His expression hardened slightly. Is it freedom to work endless shifts to pay debts you'll never clear? To exhaust yourself for a system that undervalues you? Sometimes, Elena, what we think of as freedom is merely a different kind of cage. Before I could respond, Irina returned with news that our car was waiting. The ride back to the estate passed in thoughtful silence, my mind wrestling with the contradictions Alexei presented. By the time we arrived, I had barely an hour to prepare for the evening event he'd mentioned. Katya helped me dress in the black gown, which fit as if it had been made for me, and perhaps it had been. The diamond pendant nestled at my collarbone, catching the light with every breath. When I emerged from my room, Alexei waited in the hallway, resplendent in a tuxedo that emphasized his powerful build. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, his gaze traveling slowly from my upswept hair to the heels that added inches to my height. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," I replied, fighting the warmth that bloomed in my chest at his approval. "Where are we going?" "The symphony. A charity gala afterward." He offered his arm. "The foundation is being honored for its work." The Chicago Symphony Orchestra's performance that night was breathtaking. Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D major, performed by a young virtuoso whose passion brought tears to my eyes. Seated in Alexei's private box, surrounded by luxury I'd never experienced, I found myself swept away by the music, momentarily forgetting the bizarre circumstances that had brought me there. When I glanced at Alexei during a particularly moving passage, I found him watching me rather than the stage, his expression unguarded for once. Something intimate passed between us in that moment. A shared appreciation. A connection I couldn't deny despite everything. The gala afterward was held in an opulent ballroom, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over hundreds of Chicago's elite. Alexei guided me through the crowd with a protective hand at my back, introducing me to a blur of important people. Business associates, politicians, philanthropists. To each, he presented me proudly as my fiancée, Elena, the possessive claim sending confused shivers through me each time. "You navigate this world effortlessly," I observed during a rare moment alone, sipping champagne that probably cost more than my monthly rent had. "It's a performance," he replied, his voice low enough that only I could hear, "a necessary one." "And which version is the real you?" I asked. "The art patron? The businessman? The Mafia boss?" His lips curved slightly. "All of them. None of them." His hand found mine, fingers intertwining with an intimacy that felt dangerous. "Which version of yourself is most real, Elena? The dutiful daughter paying her father's debts? The compassionate nurse? The woman who threatens socialites with scalpels?" The question hit closer to home than I cared to admit. Before I could respond, we were interrupted by a striking woman in a red gown who approached with deliberate purpose. "Alexei," she purred, ignoring me completely. "I was beginning to think you were avoiding me." A subtle tension rippled through him, though his expression remained pleasant. "Natalia, I wasn't expecting you tonight." "Clearly," she replied, her gaze finally shifting to me, trailing over my dress, my ring, my hand in his with calculated dismissal. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend, my fiancé?" Alexei corrected, his voice cooling several degrees. "Elena, this is Natalia Orlova, daughter of an associate. Natalia, my future wife, Elena Weaver." The woman's perfectly made-up face couldn't quite hide her shock and fury. "Fiancé? How sudden." She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I wasn't aware you were even dating anyone." "We prefer privacy," Alexei replied smoothly, Natalia's gaze fixed on me with new intensity. "And what exactly do you do, Elena?" besides catching Chicago's most eligible bachelor? Before I could answer, Alexei cut in. Elena is a neurological specialist. She worked at St. Mary's until recently. A nurse? Natalia's eyebrows rose, her tone making the profession sound like something distasteful. How charitable of you, Alexei. The condescension in her voice sparked something defiant in me. Mr. Volkov values compassion, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. Not everyone does. Alexei's hand tightened around mine. Whether in warning or approval, I couldn't tell. If you'll excuse us, Natalia, the Foundation's presentation is about to begin. As he led me away, I felt her glare burning into my back. I'm guessing she expected to be in my position, I murmured. Her father has been pushing for an arrangement for years, Alexei confirmed. I've never been interested. She's beautiful, I observed neutrally. Beauty without substance holds no appeal for me. His thumb traced circles on my hand, sending unwanted warmth through my veins. Besides, I'm already spoken for, aren't I? The reminder of our temporary arrangement landed like a splash of cold water. For one more day. His eyes met mine, intense and unwavering. We'll see. The Foundation presentation passed in a blur, with Alexei delivering a brief speech that was surprisingly heartfelt about continuing his mother's legacy. When we finally left close to midnight, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones, the emotional whiplash of the day taking its toll. In the car, I found myself fighting to keep my eyes open. Alexei noticed, of course. He seemed to notice everything about me. Rest, he said softly. We're almost home. Home. The word echoed strangely in my mind as I drifted off, my head eventually finding its way to his shoulder, his arm coming around me in a protective gesture that felt both foreign and oddly right. My last conscious thought was a troubling one. In just 2 days, Alexei Volkov had begun to blur the lines between captor and savior in ways I hadn't thought possible, and tomorrow, my final day in his world, would determine whether I walked away or surrendered to the golden cage he'd built around me. I awoke in my own bed, though I had no memory of how I'd gotten there. The dress had been replaced with silk pajamas, my jewelry carefully placed on the dresser. Had Alexei carried me? Had Katya helped me change? The thought of either scenario sent heat rushing to my cheeks. Today marked the final day of our agreement. The last of my 3 days in Alexei Volkov's world. By this time tomorrow, I would either be free of him or bound to him permanently. The weight of the decision pressed on me as I showered and dressed in the clothes laid out for me, a simple sundress in soft blue, comfortable yet elegant. When I went downstairs, the house was unusually quiet. No security personnel in the hallways, no sounds of staff preparing breakfast. I found my way to the kitchen, where a note waited on the counter in Alexei's bold handwriting. Gone to handle business. Back by noon. Make yourself at home. Make myself at home. The irony wasn't lost on me. Still, his absence offered an opportunity I couldn't ignore. A chance to search for answers about what really happened that night on the train. About the documents I supposedly signed. About Alexei himself. I moved cautiously through the mansion, alert for any remaining staff or security. The main floor seemed deserted, though I had no doubt cameras tracked my movements. I headed straight for the room I most wanted to explore, Alexei's study, the one room that had remained firmly off limits during my stay. To my surprise, the door was unlocked, either a careless oversight or a deliberate test. I hesitated only briefly before pushing it open and stepping inside. The space was exactly what I'd expected. Masculine, imposing, with leather-bound books lining built-in shelves and a massive desk dominating the center of the room. Windows overlooked the back gardens, and a pair of leather chairs faced a small fireplace along one wall. Everything spoke of power and old money, from the antique globe in the corner to the oil paintings of stern-looking ancestors on the walls. I went straight to the desk, careful not to disturb anything as I searched for clues. The surface held little of interest. A leather blotter, an expensive pen set, a framed photo of a younger Alexei with his mother in what looked like Red Square. I tried the drawers, finding most locked, except one that contained routine business correspondence, nothing incriminating or revealing. A safe was built into the wall behind a painting, too obvious, and certainly beyond my ability to crack. Filing cabinets lined one wall, but they too were locked. Frustration mounted as I realized Alexei was too careful to leave sensitive information lying around, even in his supposedly secure sanctuary. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A small wooden box on a side table, intricately carved with what looked like the Volkov family crest. Unlike everything else in the room, it wasn't locked, the lid lifting easily when I tried it. Inside lay several items that seemed intensely personal: an old pocket watch, a black and white photo of a stern-looking man who had Alexei's eyes, a folded piece of paper that proved to be a child's drawing signed Alyosha, age 7, and beneath everything, a small velvet pouch. My fingers trembled as I opened the pouch, knowing I was crossing a line by invading this private collection. Inside was a small, worn photograph. Alexei looking younger and more carefree than I'd ever seen him, with his arm around a smiling young woman with chestnut hair and warm eyes. They looked happy, in love. Who was she? What had happened to her? Find what you're looking for. I whirled around, heart hammering in my chest. Alexei stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I hadn't heard him approach, a man his size moving with silent precision. Words failed me as guilt warred with defiance. I was trying to understand. Understand what? He entered the room fully, closing the door behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded ominous. What happened that night on the train? What I supposedly agreed to. I held up the photograph. Who you really are. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or anger. He crossed to me and gently took the photo from my fingers, returning it to the pouch with careful movements. Her name was Irina. She was my fiancée many years ago. What happened to her? I asked softly, knowing from his use of past tense that the story didn't have a happy ending. Alexei's jaw tightened. She was killed. A car bombing meant for me. He closed the box with finality. She paid the price for loving me. The simple brutality of his statement stunned me into silence. Here was the reality of his world laid bare. The violence that shadowed his every step, that had taken someone he loved. I'm sorry, I said finally, meaning it. It was a long time ago. His voice was flat, controlled. But it taught me valuable lessons about keeping those I care for safe. The implication hung between us: his excessive security, his control over my movements, his insistence on keeping me in his protected world, all stemming from this loss, this guilt. Is that why you arranged this situation with me? I asked. Keep me close to keep me safe from your father's creditors? He studied me for a long moment. Partly, but there's more to the story. He moved to a painting on the far wall, not the one concealing the safe, but another, a landscape of the Russian countryside. When he swung it aside, it revealed not another safe, but a hidden door that opened when he pressed his palm to it. Come, he said, extending his hand to me. It's time you knew everything. Heart pounding, I placed my hand in his, allowing him to lead me through the hidden door into what appeared to be a second office. Smaller, more modern, with bank of computer screens showing security feeds from around the property. A large table dominated the center, covered with documents. This is where I actually work, Alexei explained, releasing my hand to pick up a file folder. The other office is for show, for visitors who expect a certain aesthetic. He handed me the folder. Inside was a dossier on me. Photos of me leaving the hospital after shifts, getting coffee, entering my apartment building. Detailed reports on my movements, my financial situation, my father's gambling habits. The thoroughness of the surveillance chilled me to the bone. You've been watching me for years, I whispered. The evidence undeniable. Yes. He made no attempt to deny or justify it. From the moment your father took that first loan. Why? Why this level of... I gestured to the thick file. This obsession? Alexei sighed, suddenly looking tired. It started as routine monitoring of a debtor's family, standard procedure to ensure we had leverage if needed. He moved to one of the screens, pulling up an image that made my breath catch. Me, 3 years ago, running into a burning building. I remembered that day vividly. I'd been walking home from a shift when I passed an apartment building with smoke pouring from a second-floor window. Without thinking, I'd run inside to help an elderly woman who couldn't evacuate on her own. The local news had covered it briefly. Nursing student rescues, elderly woman from fire. I hadn't thought anyone had paid much attention. This, Alexei said softly, was the moment I became interested in more than your father's debt. Because I ran into a burning building? I asked, confused. Because you risked your life for a stranger without hesitation. His eyes met mine. Do you know how rare that quality is in my world? How valuable? I shook my head, trying to process what he was telling me. So you've been, what? Grooming me as a potential wife for 3 years? I've been watching you, he corrected. Learning who you are, waiting for the right moment to approach you. His expression darkened. Then your father died, leaving you drowning in his debts. Debts I could have called in immediately, ruined you completely. But you didn't, I said slowly. No. I waited, watched you work yourself to exhaustion, trying to honor obligations that weren't yours. Something like admiration colored his voice. Your loyalty, even to a father who had betrayed your trust repeatedly, it was remarkable. It wasn't remarkable, I insisted. It was just right. In my experience, Elena, people rarely do what's right when it's difficult. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. That night on the train, it wasn't chance. I arranged to be there when you would be most vulnerable, most open to an alternative. A chill ran through me. You planned it all. Yes. No apology, no justification, just truth. Did you drug me? I demanded, needing to know. No, he said firmly. I would never. You were exhausted, barely conscious even before you fell asleep. When I woke you at your stop, you were disoriented, suggestible. I helped you off the train, explained your situation, offered my solution. His eyes held mine. You agreed, Elena. Not enthusiastically, perhaps, but consciously. Then you passed out again in my car from sheer exhaustion. I searched my memory, trying to find any fragment of this interaction. But the night remained a blank. I don't remember any of it. People often don't remember decisions made in states of extreme fatigue, he said. It's similar to the amnesia surgical patients sometimes experience after receiving sedatives. They can have entire conversations they later forget. As a nurse, I knew this was true. I'd seen patients have lucid conversations they had no memory of later. Still, the violation of it, the manipulation, made me feel ill. So what happens now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Our 3 days are almost up. Alexei moved to the table, picking up another document, the marriage license I'd supposedly signed. Now I give you a real choice, with full information and a clear mind. He tore the paper in half, the sound shockingly loud in the quiet room. The original agreement is void. I stared at the torn document, stunned. What does that mean? It means you're free to leave, right now, with no obligations. He opened a drawer and removed an envelope, placing it on the table between us. Inside is documentation releasing you from your father's debt entirely, plus enough money to start over wherever you choose. New city, new job, new life. You'll never see or hear from me again. My hands shook as I reached for the envelope. Just like that? After all this effort? Just like that. His expression was carefully blank, but something flickered in his eyes. Pain, perhaps. I want you, Elena, but not as a prisoner, not as someone who stays out of fear or obligation. I opened the envelope, verifying its contents, documents indeed releasing me from all debt, and a cashier's check with more zeros than I'd ever seen. Why? Why offer this now? Alexei's controlled facade cracked slightly, genuine emotion bleeding through. Because in these 3 days, I've seen the woman you truly are. Not just in files and surveillance photos, but up close. Your compassion with my mother, your strength with Natalia and Isabella, your curiosity about my work. He paused. You deserve a real choice. And if I choose to stay, the question surprised me as much as him. Something like hope flickered across his features before he controlled it. Then we start again, properly. No debts, no obligations, no pretense. Just 2 people learning if they can build something real together, with you still being who you are, I added. Still running your businesses. Yes, he acknowledged. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. My world has darkness in it, Elena. Danger. I can promise to keep it away from you as much as possible, but I can't change who I am or the legacy I was born into. The honesty was stark, unvarnished. For the first time since waking in his bed, wearing his ring, I felt like I was seeing the real Alexei Volkov, not just the Mafia boss, the businessman, or the devoted son, but all of them together. "I need some air," I said, the walls suddenly feeling too close. "I need to think." He nodded. "The gardens are secure." "Take all the time you need. I'll be in the main study when you've decided." The gardens were peaceful in the late afternoon sunlight, flowers releasing their fragrance into the warm air. I walked the stone paths, the envelope clutched in my hand, wrestling with the impossible choice before me: freedom, a fresh start, safety from the danger that shadowed Alexei's world, or a life with a man who had manipulated me, but also protected me, who had shown me glimpses of tenderness alongside his ruthless control, who ran criminal enterprises, but also returned stolen art to Holocaust survivors, who had watched me for years, but was now giving me a genuine choice. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns, I made my decision. I found my way back to the main study, where Alexei stood by the window, his powerful frame silhouetted against the dying light. He turned as I entered, his expression guarded but his eyes betraying his tension. I crossed to him slowly, stopping just out of reach. "I have conditions," I said. Something like hope flickered in his gaze. "Name them." "I returned to nursing. Not full-time, perhaps, but I need my work. It's part of who I am." He nodded. "With appropriate security arrangements, yes. I want to be involved in the foundation. Expand it to include medical care for underserved communities." A smile touched his lips. "Done. My mother would approve. And I need honesty between us, complete honesty." I held his gaze. "No more manipulations, no more secrets." This gave him pause. "There are aspects of my business that must remain. I don't need operational details," I clarified. "I need to know who you are, what you feel, what you want from me, all of it, not just the parts you think I can handle." He considered this, then nodded slowly. "I can give you that." I took a deep breath, my decision crystallizing with each passing moment. "One more thing. We start from the beginning. No engagement, no rushed timeline. We date, like normal people. We learn each other slowly." Alexei's smile was genuine now, reaching his eyes and transforming his severe features into something approaching tenderness. "I believe the traditional first step is dinner." "Dinner?" I agreed, surprising myself with a small smile in return. "Not as your possession or your salvation, but as two people seeing where this leads." He extended his hand, an invitation rather than a demand. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my palm against his, feeling the warmth of his skin, the strength in his fingers as they closed gently around mine. "To new beginnings," he said softly. As the last light of day filtered through the windows, casting us in golden hues, I realized I was stepping willingly into Alexei's world, with my eyes open, my mind clear, and my heart cautiously optimistic. The path ahead held no guarantees, only possibilities. Darkness and light intertwined, danger and protection, passion and power. I had woken up in the Mafia boss's bed 3 days ago, a ring on my finger and confusion in my mind. Now I stood before him by choice, the future unwritten but undeniably ours to shape together. To new beginnings,